Hello and welcome to another edition of Here's the Pitch, sponsored by Masses Restaurants, 5 locations in St. Louis. You've heard me talk about them, stlmasses.com. Normally I wear a little baseball shirt. I'm wearing my Harold Schnepp shirt. I'm going to back up just a little bit. Mike Richter can't see, but I'm wearing, because it's one of my last shirts that I have from that era, but this is the one I decided back as a kid to buy, and the Blues won the Stanley Cup a year ago around this time. Who doesn't love Harold Schnepp's? Mike Richter, I know you do. Hello, Mike.
Yeah, he's my favorite Schneps for sure.
Do you remember Harold? I don't know if you're old enough. You don't?
Why? What?
Because he looked like this. He didn't wear a helmet. He had a giant, big, thick mustache, and he was really bad at hockey.
No. The only non-helmet guy that I remember was Craig McTavish, who I believe is the last.
Number 28, I believe, from the old days.
Hey.
Well, that's what we're here for. Numbers. We play the numbers game. Mike, I think I say it every time, but people love this. I think we've seen people in our own little fantasy baseball camp go, hey, give us more, right? I don't know if they were being serious or not, but I'm going to, because I don't really know some of those people, but I got to believe that I think people like it.
We do what the people say, and they say, give us more numbers. They like going back down memory lane, bringing back people that they have since forgotten, bringing them back into the picture, and now about a month away from probably having baseball, if all things stay the same, we're keeping it going until then.
I can't wait. I think we mentioned this one time, and by the way, it's hard to do this because you want to have a little discussion about some people, and then you start looking at numbers, and you're like, I don't know, does that work? Well, we've mentioned 28 before because of Tommy Herr going into the Cardinal Hall of Fame.
Correct.
So we're doing 28 today. I did a deeper dive on it, and I thought, well, there's some interesting things here. There's some fun trends, which is my favorite part. If there's trends like we did, 41 was the last one, where we had the Bennis brothers, the McDaniel brothers, pitchers wearing 41. So 28 today, there will be a little trend that we'll talk about. 28, when you think of 28, I always have to go off the top of your head. For me, it's Tommy Herr. I think I have to say, and then Garry Bennett, one of my favorite people of all time. Who do you have?
Yeah, so a couple come to mind. Tommy Herr for one, but then Pedro Guerrero. I'm a big 90s Cardinals guy, and for me, some of my only toys growing up were starting lineup action figures that Kenner made in the 80s and 90s. I believe the series started in 88. So right in the prime time of Pedro Guerrero coming over to the Cardinals, and I remember his starting lineup. It was in the away gray, and it was the after swing, and he had a yellow bat that hung down after his after swing, and he'd always be the one that I picked up and put in either the outfield or first base. So for me, that's why I remember Pedro Guerrero in being number 28.
Well, if we're going to go ahead and talk and maybe go out of order, I wanted to remember that I was going to tell this story about Pedro Guerrero, who does seem to come up a lot on our show here, on anybody that I interview, because I've just heard he's crazy. Like, he's a nut job. They had a pretty publicized bar fight in Houston late into the evening at some point in 1992, which, if it happened now, would just be all over Twitter and hilarious. But Pedro Guerrero did come over, was traded from the Dodgers to the Cardinals for John Tudor, which is in itself amazing that we traded John Tudor, but then we got this giant bat and the history of Pedro throwing the glove down in 1985 in left field off Jack Clark's home run. So he comes over and he just hits. I mean, he literally was still in his prime. It wasn't like we got some guy that wasn't, it wasn't like, oh, this guy will be here for a couple years, like the Will Clarks, the kinds of guys we mentioned, who will also come up here in a moment here during 28. But anyway, so he's really good. So in 1989, I've mentioned I made a spring training trip, my first trip to spring training with Aunt Betty, my mom, and my grandma. And we went and we had a great time. We took a van, we went through Chattanooga and stopped in Atlanta, all the fun that you could do as you drove down to spring training. So we stayed at the hotel across from Al Lang Stadium, and I believe that night there was this reception. And again, I've mentioned this on the show before, but there was some sort of players' reception where the Pirates were there, the Blue Jays, the Cardinals. So I started getting all these autographs on this thing. So after that, we go out to this sports bar that's in the hotel and decide we're going to have, chicken wings. I don't remember what we ate, Mike. That's not important to the story. But inside this sports bar, there was a Pop-A-Shot. And as a little kid, there's like arcades. And I'm like, wow, this is great. I've never seen Pop-A-Shot. So I started playing Pop-A-Shot. And I'm nailing, threes from the corner or whatever. I get tapped on my shoulder and I look and it's Pedro Guerrero over my shoulder saying, can I take a few shots? So now me and Pedro are taking shots, right? And I'm like, this is the greatest thing ever. And of course we had our video camera with us. So I'm like, Betty, turn on the camera, get this on tape. I mean, when is this ever going to happen? So great night. We actually had a few beers with Pedro Guerrero. I was 10, 11, so I didn't have any. But Aunt Betty and my mom is really a good conversationalist, so she can talk to anybody. But it was the greatest night. Pedro was so cool to me. And the postscript of that is that if you remember, Aunt Betty was digging all the players. Don Hinkle was the guy she was really into, that she gave her number to. Well, that night, Pedro Guerrero was with this catcher from the Expos named Nelson Santavena, because Aunt Betty actually heard that I was telling the story. She goes, oh, what was that catcher's name that I met? I said, Nelson. Out of nowhere, I picked that name, Nelson Santavena, who played for the Expos. She was into him. He wasn't really into her, but they had some sort of connection. But now I'm starting to think Aunt Betty was like, Susan Sarandon. She was all over the place during the spring training trip, now that I think back.
Yeah. Not very selective. A lot of C-list roster players.
Well, hey, she was smart. She knew not to go after Pedro Guerrero. Go after the backup catcher of the Expos. So Pedro Guerrero was so awesome. I think we got his autograph, and he was so cool. I come back. I'm excited to watch the video, and it's completely dark. They didn't know how to shoot video back then, so you barely see it. It's like me, and I waved, and it's just ridiculous. But to me, it was like Pedro Guerrero became my favorite player, as an 11-year-old that night, because it's like when you get that kind of experience with a baseball player as a kid, it literally just changes your whole outlook on life. And so to tell that,
had him on?
no, I don't know if now this is a weird story. Remember, there was like death rumors about him, like he was dead, and now he's not. I don't know how to get a hold of him, and I don't think many people do. But you know what? That's a goal. Maybe we'll work on getting Pedro on the show.
I'd love to have Pedro Guerrero on.
All right, so that's my Pedro Guerrero story, going out of order here on the 28 show. But you know what? Let's start with. Did you enjoy that? I hope you did. The Pop-A-Shot. Yeah, we a little Pop-A-Shot.
Those stories, and anytime we can weave in Aunt Betty and her antics, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I'll see if there's any others in here. So 28. Let's go from the beginning. Joe Medwick wore it, I think, a year. Ducky Medwick, Pepper Martin. So we've got the 30s greats.
Those are some big Cardinal names.
Right off the bat, yeah, in the 30s, wearing it and doing the whole, what was the name of the band that they had? They had a band, but the 30s Cardinals were fun, and those are big names. Number 28. And then Phil Collins. I don't think that Phil Collins, Mike. Don't start thinking Another Day in Paradise.
After him either.
Yeah. Oh, that's a Tom Collins. Or no, Arnold Palmer? I don't know what I'm.
Facts again, Brad. I'm not here for facts.
I just woke up from a nap and I'm shot out of a cannon. Ernie White. These are great. I just like these names. Ernie White in the 40s. Ted Wilkes was a pitcher, I believe. And he wore it in the late 40s. Joe Cunningham. I always thought. Now this was research. I did research this. I'm like, is the Joe Cunningham who's
we're against research?
Did Joe Cunningham? Does he work at the ballpark? But I thought there was a Joe Cunningham guy who worked at the ballpark. It's not the same guy, from what I can tell. I mean, Joe Cunningham, I don't believe this one's alive, but he played in the 50s for the Cardinals. Okay. All right, so now here's why I got excited about doing number 28. This is the first time this will happen, but it happens a lot, and I find this interesting. 1962, a young guy from CBC, then he goes to Mizzou, and the Cardinals pick him up, and he plays a cup of coffee in number 28, Mike Shannon, in 1962. So his first number, people don't really think of him. They always think of the 18, but Mike Shannon, I would go find a number 28 Mike Shannon jersey.
Right, and the early 60s jerseys were really cool, too. So if you can get your hands on the 62-28 Shannon jersey and just drop it in front of him and be like, can you sign this? You think he'd know what's up?
I'm going to have to check on that, and I bet he would. I would love to tell Mike Shannon stories, but where do you start and where do you end? I think my only favorite one that I can tell here that I can really think of was one of the traveling times with Mike Shannon when I was traveling with the Cardinals. Mike Shannon was at the same hotel bar with me, and we played Pop-A-Shot. No, I'm kidding. So I was on the other end of the bar. It was a small bar, but there's a few of the players, and everybody starts filtering out. And in those days, I was out as late as possible. I'm like, when am I going to be out at a bar with Mike Shannon this late? We start whatever, and so the next day, it was like 4:00 in the morning. I finally go to the bed. He's still up. I get to the ballpark around 1 to start my day for work. And here comes Mike Shannon around 2:30 to dinner. Hey, who we gonna do, big boy? We gotta get that camera over here at 4:00. I think I got Dusty Baker ready. I'm like, okay. I go, man, Mike. What? I said, how'd your night? How long did you stay there? He's like, yeah, I was there till about 5:00. Actually, I got 18 holes in this morning, so I'm feeling great. And I said, wait a minute, you stayed up and then did you sleep? He goes, Brad, let me tell you something. I don't sleep. I get a lot of naps. I tell you what, by the third inning, I'll probably be in my fifth nap. But so then I did. I asked him about this more and more. He does not believe you need sleep. He's like, listen, Stan the man never slept. Oh, he always just took a nap. It's all he says. Just take a nap here and there. You'll be fine. And that is probably one of the secrets to Mike Shannon's success, I think, is that he doesn't sleep.
No sleep, naps only.
It's my favorite Mike Shannon, one of my favorite Mike Shannon stories. And he also carried his, I remember that same day, all this happened in Atlanta. He was talking about needing some money or whatever, and he went to his wallet and he pulled out basically a stack of cash in a rubber band. And that's all he had. He didn't have his ID. And I said, do you have a wallet? He's like, no, I don't need, who needs a wallet? This is all you need right here. It's a rubber band. No, I don't carry a wallet either because of Mike Shannon. So he wore number 28. Any Mike Shannon story? All right, we'll move on. We'll try to get Mike. I've been actually thinking about getting Mike on the show here to see what he's been doing. I'm guessing a lot of hunting and fishing.
Likely.
All right. Orlando Cepeda. So you always think of Orlando Cepeda wearing number 20 or wearing number 30.
I'm going to skip over Duke Carmel. I mean, that's one of the greatest names that we've come across, right?
I just sort of write these all down, so I don't really. If there's one that I want to skip over, it was more of the weaving of the first number. But go ahead. No, you have a Duke what's his name? Duke Carmel?
63.
How do you spell that last name?
Carmel, like Carmel.
Okay. How was he?
That's a great name. That's a great fake baseball name.
Yeah, was he any good?
No.
It's funny. These guys, they all use different, names on the road. That sounds like a name that someone would have picked up and used on the road. Hey, right. I'm Duke Carmel. What do you think Duke Carmel sounds like? It sounded like Mike Shannon to me.
John Lackey.
Hey, let's get a beer, huh? That's my John Lackey impression. That's all I have. All right, Duke Carmel. I don't have anything on him. Do you? How did he do in '63?
Great name.
Oh, okay. Well, Orlando Cepeda wore it in '66. Here's something I should know more of. That we actually acquired Cepeda early on. Actually, I think in that offseason. I didn't realize he played the whole 66 with us. If I would have seen that he showed up in 66, I would have thought, oh, that was a midseason trade, because you always think of him in 67 with the Cardinals. Right. But I didn't think of him playing on that 66 team's kind of forgotten, but he was on it.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I was in the same boat on that.
So he wore it and then changed to 30. Veda Pinson. So here's some names of guys that played for other. I had to look Veda Pinson up. I'm like, gosh, I know that name. He was a great Cincinnati Red. He's in the Cincinnati Red Hall of Fame. He was a Cardinal in 1969, wore number 28. All right. Mo Dabrowski. Sounds like Al Rabowski. That's the way I've always remember him. But I remember Mo Dabrowski's name. He was a Cardinal in the mid-'70s. Rich Folkers in the mid-'70s. So we haven't really hit a guy that really sticks out.
No, we're having a rough stretch.
So then, Grant, there's a few in there. You want to name some names? I didn't actually write these guys' names. Grant Wall, or what's his name? Who's Grant? There's a Grant in there, right? Are you looking?
No, I am. I don't see a Grant. I see Mick Kelleher and Charlie Chant.
Charlie Chant was the... Gant. Jant?
Chant.
How do you spell that?
Chant.
Okay, yeah.
No, hey.
What do you think he sounded like?
I don't know. But Mick Kelleher reminds me of actually the ballpark in Peoria. There was a bar called Kelleher's, so where the Cardinals single A affiliate is now. There was one there, in the outfield they had the sponsor. interestingly enough, this guy played for the Cardinals and the Cubs. Nick Kelleher, and in Peoria has changed between Cardinals and Cubs quite a lot in the last 20 years.
So you're putting 2 and 8 together. Not 2 and 2 together. You think that could be that guy?
Could be.
All right. So we've kind of run through some names, and then we get to the guy that will probably be remembered to wear it, number 28, Tommy Herr. Comes up 1979. He's here into 88. We talked about that trade a couple shows ago. To me, Tommy Herr, the things I remember as a kid, knowing that he only hit 8 home runs in 1985 and drove on 110 RBIs is crazy. And then I also think that, Ozzie was great, but to see these two turn a double play, and of course there's mind memory there when you play with a guy for 10 years. Right. But Ozzie and Tommy Herr, I guess Ozzie because he would throw it at his chest high every single time. It just looked beautiful. But man, seeing these two turn a double play, that's what I always think of when I think of Tommy Herr, was just how beautiful those two turned a double play.
Yeah, and stability, and even through like everything that happened in the mid '80s, where the '82 team was turned over into the '85. You had the guys that stuck through that. Tommy, Ozzie, Willie are kind of the guys that rode that entire wave. So you think about the stability in how long you've been here, and that's kind of rare for that era of Cardinals baseball, and in the changing of management that happened during that time. That Herr was a guy that kind of was around that whole decade.
I remember, it's always, I love these when I remember as a kid things that happened. In 85, that's when I really became a baseball fan, and it was kind of late into 85 because the team wasn't real good early on, but they had all these big moments. And I for some reason, remember being out in the neighbors around where you had the transistor or the boombox and you had the game going, or we were playing wiffle ball. And I do remember Ken Wilson calling a walk-off home run by Tommy Herr, and it's on heck of a year, so it started to obviously continue on where he goes, "The Cardinals pull off another miracle." And I just remembered that home run because I remember listening to it, and it was like everybody was going to do something, but Tommy Herr seemed like he was doing something every day in 1985. I guess I don't have it in front of me, but Willie won the MVP. I guess Tommy Herr had to be in the top 5 with numbers like that. I think he hit over 300. So
well, it helps when on your third pitch that you have guys at second and third base all the time. Too.
Very good point. He was, and then the girls loved him. He had the perm. He was hated by the Mets, which was he was like our Wally Backman or Tim Tuffle. We hated the Tuffle shuffle, and it was just, that was the fun, is that we knew that the other team hated him. He was like a Jeff Courtnall. If I can go to hockey, we loved having Jeff Courtnall. We hated it when he played on someone else's team. So huge Tommy Herr fan. And then Seat Cushion Night. That was one I remember that he did. Why are you laughing at me? You're just laughing to be laughing. Tommy Herr hit the grand slam on Seat Cushion Night, and we're driving around, we're listening to it. This is when they would do the game that you had to pay like $5.95 to watch each home game. They had pay-per-view home games, but they would play it again right after, a replay. So we decided, well, let's watch it. And it was like 11 o'clock, so we stayed up all night to watch Tommy Herr hit that grand slam, but we watched the replay. But that, just imagine paying that no one talks about that. You had to pay $5.95 to watch a home game back in the day.
Racket.
And now it's like you don't get your games. You're like, oh, why aren't they? They're not on today.
Why is this thing on Facebook?
There it is. I love when they're on Facebook, by the way. It kind of helps me financially, but I don't think people care. I do want to mention, if I haven't already, these are on YouTube. We're doing this on video. We're always doing these on video now. So YouTube, if you only listen via Stitcher or TuneIn, go to YouTube, search ST Weekly. I put these all up. Any other Tommy Herr thoughts that you'd like before we move on? I know we talked about when he got traded that it was kind of
great Cardinal. We'll be happy when we can fully celebrate his induction into the Cardinal Hall of Fame. I think it'll bring back a lot of great memories, and whenever you can bring that era of Cardinals baseball into the current era, I think it bodes well for the fans and for the team.
What have you ever gone to one of those inductions?
I'm not.
Yeah, every time I think about going, I decide not to because I think the winter warm up always I get these flashbacks of being around Cardinal fans at the winter warm up. We're all too tight. At least Busch Stadium, you can kind of move away from everybody. I don't need like grandma and grandma from Iowa kind of up my area, especially during COVID.
We're starting to get guys that haven't necessarily been around the team as much as some others. So, if you think about the Rollins and Tommy Herr's, guys that when you bring them back in the fold, it's really being able to be celebrated instead of guys that you might see, down at spring training on a yearly basis. I think they're more impactful.
Yeah, and Scott Rowland's one of my all-time favorite players just personally because I got to know him a lot, and that was the one where I'm like, I got to go down and see Scott Rowland, but I think I went swimming instead and saw him later some other time. So Tommy Herr gets traded in 1988 early on for Tom Bernansky. We did number 23 before. People burned jerseys and it was a bad day. But then we got Pedro Guerrero in mid 1988. We talked Pedro a lot. I don't know if there's anything else we have to add. Although the man, he was just a hit maker. I mean, even in 1992, he was still on the team. So he stuck around for 4 years. And he was a big part of like the 91, 92 era. I mean, those teams didn't win, but if you go back and look,
no pitching,
right?
Like you look at the lineups and you're like, these are some nice lineups.
Yeah, and if you go back, those teams were somewhat in it throughout July at least, and then they would run out of arms.
Those teams could have benefited from a wild card type setup.
It's true. Yeah, there would have been a lot. They'd have been a lot closer, that's for sure. I think they were third place a lot, but they may have been that second wild. And they had 87 wins 2 or 3 of those years during Joe Torre's run. So, but yes, there was no wild card. Gerald Perry comes over. He was wearing 21 for a few years. Then Pedro leaves. He's like, I'll take 28. I think he was mean to Jack Buck one time, and so that's the only story I really know about him. So that doesn't seem good to me.
Professional hitter. Gerald Perry.
Left-hander, good swing. Gerald Perry, Lance Painter. This is why we didn't win a lot in the 90s. I like Lance Painter. Nice. I don't know. Don't know.
Good little lefty.
Good little lefty. So then we've talked about this. I skipped over a name that I wanted to get in there. Between Tommy Herr and Pedro Guerrero, all these guys in 1988 played for the Cardinals. Dan Quisenberry. We get Dan Quisenberry, and he wears 28. Was formerly 29 with the Royals. Ended up wearing number 40, I think, in 1989, but his first number with the Cardinals was number 28. Great closer. One of the first guys I ever saw throw sidearm like that. Him and Kent DeColvey were like the only two guys that kind of really dropped it down like that. Also saw him at the hotel in spring training. He was really. I said, "Hey, look, I can do your motion for you," and he's like, "Good job, kid." And didn't really care.
You were the batting stance guy before the batting stance guy.
I was pitching. I was wind-up guy. I'm wind-up guy. Like, hey, Bob Welsh, watch this. I can pitch just like you. And then I'd throw it up the screen.
Should have marketed it.
Maybe I still can. I still do it around the house. It's like my only exercise.
The window's closed.
Okay. The batting stance guy is still out there. I still see him on YouTube doing his thing.
Yes, he is definitely still out there.
So Dan Quisenberry, Mike Shannon, Orlando Cepeda, all kind of remembered for different numbers, even though Quisenberry wasn't. Will Clark comes to the Cardinals in 2000 for one game. You can find it. He shows up in Montreal, and he wears number 28, and that's because Mike Matheny was wearing number 22. And then the next day, Mike Matheny's wearing number 44. Will Clark's wearing number 22. I don't know what went down between those two, but Will Clark, his first game and only game in 28, was his first game as a Cardinal.
Knowing Matheny was probably a nice conversation with some directness, and then they switched numbers.
It's funny because I wanted to mention this story. We didn't really bring this up, but we did number 41 a couple times. Well, it was last time. And we talked about Pat Cishek had the number, and then John Lackey showed up and wore the number right away. I believe, didn't Lackey give him something for the number, like a car or some sort of autograph? He had a Babe Ruth, like Cishek was into autographs, and he got him some Babe. There was like a great exchange, and it's a funny story. Like this John Lackey, giant man, postseason hero, and he comes in, he's like, I'm going to wear that number, but I'll get you something.
Right. That'd be a good segment. You know, if we were to do research for a show, to dig in and do some research about things like that have happened within the organization, because I'm sure you can get a hold of some of those guys and recount some of those stories, and it'd be kind of nice. Like, through your contacts, I bet we can find some pretty good ones on some things that happened under the tables, whether it be for jersey numbers, locker positions, things like that.
Yeah, it's so stupid, but I'm fascinated by it. I remember when Matt Carpenter, his first spring, two things about that were funny. Chris Carpenter was still on the team, and he wore number 29, so they gave Matt Carpenter number 92. And I didn't know him very well. And I said, number 92, that's a. And it was right next to the door. And he's like, yeah, anytime I come out out of the shower, everyone can just see my junk hanging out. It's great. I thought that was pretty funny that he'd already. But he was wearing number 92 at that point. I think that's funny. They just flipped the numbers.
Right.
Now he wears number 13.
That's true. Thanks.
Just in case you were forgetting that, you hadn't seen him play in a while. Will Clark was here and then wore it for one day. Yeah, I was going to say, I wonder what Mike Matheny did. We never really heard what he did to change to 44. I'm sure Matheny just didn't care, but he did switch back to 22. And then he wore it as a manager, and then he gave it up again to 20. Remember, who did he give? Oh, Jason Hayward.
Jason Hayward.
Yeah, that's right. So that number, it's all 22 always comes back.
So now it'll be in royal blue.
So after Will Clark for a day, it really takes a toll here. Larry Sutton, he had a walk-off, I remember him. Any Larry Sutton? No. Bill Ortega, Mike Coolbaugh. Wait, Lance Pater.
He was the one that got hit by the foul ball, right?
I believe that was Scott Coolbaugh, and I don't know if they were related, but I don't think it was the same Coolbaugh. And that's okay. Everybody remembers that happening, but that did not. I don't believe that happened to him, but maybe in our research you can find that out. Lance Pater shows back up in 03. He wears 28. Colin Porter in 04. I kind of don't remember Colin Porter. I mean, barely. Do you? 2004? I mean, most of the 2004 people you remember pretty much.
Right. No, not at all. Must have been an arm.
Roger Cedeno. I always say Roger because that's the way he said, hello, I'm Roger Cedeno. He comes over and plays in 04, and he was on the postseason roster. I remember him. I believe he had a giant bunt in Game 7. Right? Am I right?
Yeah, mostly useless, but there was that.
I remember we tried. I had to do a postseason video, and I wanted to make sure everybody got in it. And the only shot of Roger Cedeno we had was like him coming off the field and high fiving people. And we said, "Well, there it is, the Roger Cedeno shot. He's high fiving someone."
For some reason, I just remember him like really doing well against the Cardinals when he was on the Astros, and maybe I was off. I'm sure I can look up some splits and stuff. But then when those guys come over and then they're just not that dude, it's like, ugh, why? I remember that being one of the more disappointed guys for me.
Didn't expect much out of him, but he was a nice guy. I do remember that. 05, Scott Siebel wears number 28. I believe he had kind of a big game against the Yankees. We played the Yankees for some reason. That's the only memory. Maybe a walk-off, but not much there. Then Garry Bennett. He wears it in 06 and 07. Again, anytime we talk about world championship teams, you always kind of remember those guys. I've even said that to him a million times. I'm like, man, I mean, if you're not on a world championship team, you might get lost. But you had the 2 walk-offs against the Cubs. People remember that forever. Like, those are giant memories. And he's a very good dude. He's a friend of Scott Rowland. So, Garry Bennett, number 28.
So, just looking up, career, Roger Cedeno against the Cardinals, a 336 hitter lifetime.
It's pretty good.
Yeah. That's why I didn't like it.
Because he didn't do it here. I get that. That makes sense. Colby Rasmus was the next one to wear it.
Mr. GM.
This is the guy. I don't think there was more conversations about a player for years before he played with the Cardinals than this guy. Like, his name came up, when are they going to get Colby? We got to get Colby up here. And then it was like, when are we going to get him out of here? People just didn't. There was a lot of pressure on that guy, and then obviously he didn't handle it well. But that was one thing.
And you think about the conflicting sides in the control freak that was in the clubhouse, and then the dad at home, and a player caught in between, a lifetime coach and a lifetime professional coach, and he was in a position where, because of the notoriety, because of the pedigree, because of the expectations, there was no way for Colby Rasmus to come in and win unless he was immediately, the next coming of Albert Pujols. And it didn't work out that way, but luckily for himself, he was able to get into town. Cardinals bring a few pieces over, key to that championship run, and in the end, it worked out for everyone.
I remember people being really pissed off that they traded him. Like, oh, you can't trade him. He's gonna. I never understood like people like wanting to. It's like, wait, you can win now. People really wanted to hang on to him.
Right. Well, it was choosing sides, right? So you knew that Tony La Russa was not going to be around for the next 10 years, right? And he did not work well with Colby Rasmus. And Colby Rasmus was a guy that you could say potentially could be around for the next 10 years. And it just wasn't a good marriage. So you had people prior to Colby's exit picking sides against the manager. And then when things went down like that, and that's not unique to Rasmus. I mean, you have people from the moment that Tony La Russa came over and opened the shortstop battle in spring training between Royce Clayton and Ozzie Smith, and said, whoever has a better spring training will get it. Ozzie outperforms them, and Royce Clayton is the primary shortstop. So there's a lot of people that we're on the other side of the fence with Tony from that part, and on similar situations. Mentioned Scott Rowland going through his career. So Rasmus was just the last one of those to happen.
It's true. Colby also, I think of him, and this is not, I know it sounds like a shot, but he reminds me kind of like a Randall Grichuk, and this is where I put on my little Cardinal hat, and he's not a Cardinal player. Like, you do kind of everything right if you're a Cardinal most of the time. Even if you're not, a great hitter, at least you can run the bases, or you play some good defense, or you make the correct throw. And Colby, I remember a time when a few players, I would say, what's it like being around this guy? He's like, all he thinks about is hitting. He doesn't care about anything. All he does is go to the cage. And that's just, it's not, you need everything. I mean, even if you're a 240 hitter, at least, like Grichuk, I do think at least can play defense and can run and does throw to the right bases, and he just doesn't hit a lot. But he's one of those guys who's probably not going, if he's hitting seventh on your team, you might be able to get into the playoffs. But, here we needed to hit like third or fourth, and that wasn't going to work. Colby, that's all you think about was just all he thought about was hitting.
Yeah, and he got that. I think part of that was just a baseball IQ, and a kid that had the five tools, but people didn't realize, where the wiring was in him.
Yep. So then he leaves, and Dotel comes over in that trade, along with Zepp and Edwin Jackson and Corey Patterson, Octavio Dotel. We've talked about him before. Don't win a World Series without him. That's what I always love about it. You name a guy like that, and you're like, if you don't have it sounds so silly, but he was amazing during the playoffs.
And not only was it amazing, he's such a high energy dude, right? And that's why he's been on winners, because he brings that kind of energy. He's a fun guy to be around. He gets along with people, does his job. You never have to question whether he's going to do his job or anything like that. And then he fit in with the culture on that team and the leadership on that 11 team in that group when he came in, and created a perfect storm where he was able to be successful and the team was able to be successful.
So then it looks like it goes vacant for a couple years, so I'm guessing either a coach for it, I'm not sure, but then not Pat Neshek, but Steve Cishek. Always get confused by these two.
Yeah, well, Steve Cishek, who I just remember the bombs that he would give up, and in a couple in particular to Chris Bryant. Man, and that's played on replay. He might still be on the Cubs now. I don't know if that experiment went well or not, but I can imagine walking to that clubhouse and knowing the guy that just owned you. And that's what he was. He wasn't horrible over here. He's been worse in other places before and since. But it's had some good moments, but also had some moments that are just cringeworthy.
And he's the least baseball-looking player I think I've ever seen. He's like kind of like Carl Edwards. He's tiny and skinny and lanky, and he doesn't have like a pitcher body, so he throws the way he looks like his body should be. I wasn't the Marlins closer for a while. I remember there was a time when I was doing some gambling on baseball, and I went on a run thanks to the Marlins and then thanks to Steve Cishek. There was a game where the Marlins, I believe, were winning at Dodger Stadium 7-5. in the ninth, and I went ahead and I had some money on that game. I was, and it was a lot. Like I was in a thing where I got $200. Like $200 is a lot to me, in case people want to know what a lot is. But I was doing, I was like a 75, then I'd get to 100, then I do 150. So this is like a big game. I'm like five games in a row, and they're down. And I think Cishek gave up back-to-back home runs that night, and it was the greatest gambling win of my life.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Last guy to wear it. Yeah. People love these stories. Tommy Pham. Man, what a lightning rod.
Still is.
Yeah, I mean, I want to see what he's going to do in San Diego. I don't know if we'll ever see baseball the way it was before. So this is the kind of guy where the career. You just got to believe that the Cardinals didn't like his eyesight issues, and then obviously the things he said about them. Because this is the kind of guy you just don't give up on unless you have some sort of working knowledge. And I would like to think that the fact that he kind of went off on them in articles and on the radio or wherever wasn't that big a deal. Like they could have handled it, but they had some sort of medical thought where, man, this, first of all, he's 32, he's going to get hurt, his eyesight, because it was a gamble. They didn't get anything for him, and you were in a pennant race at the point where you traded him. So it's the most unbelievably weird trade that the Cardinals have ever made.
Not only that, but there was parts of that season where he was the only person hitting.
Yeah,
and it wasn't even in the lineup all the time, which was the other baffling part of it. And I think, you talked about the eyesight stuff. I think that, from my perspective, it was used as a convenient excuse, and that there was more things. A vocal player inside the Cardinals clubhouse that speaks out against the brass in the Cardinal way for legit reasons, in how they're treating and not giving them the opportunities and the reasons why. He was a guy that you could have extended and had a happy player and had a guy that could give you exactly what you needed, whether it be corner infield or potentially center field. And the Cardinals just didn't want to deal with it. And I think it was, I think they're still feeling the effects of that. When we lace up here in about a month, we'll get to see if, we can play outfielder roulette and come up with some guys that can be everyday players. I don't know that there's anyone there. I know Tommy Pham would be.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And I wasn't around enough to see if there was, if I could get any intel. So I would not like to just kind of do my own research or try to pontificate here, because I try to, like the Colby Rasmus story. I heard people tell me all he wants to do is hit. So I could understand why he was not a favorite. Although I got to say about Colby, people did like him. They wanted him, players wanted him to succeed. There was no anger towards him. They just said, this kid just he can't think about anything else besides taking swings. So the Tommy Pham one, I don't have enough information, but it's very odd.
Yep.
All right. I had another topic, but we've gone like 45 minutes here. I think we're going to do baseball cards.
28s were good. I wasn't expecting it.
Yeah, we had fun with 28. So I'll save this other topic because we like to do kind of a mishmash here. We do a topic, a number, and then we open some baseball cards. I think we can just do baseball cards. It's up to you, Mike. What do you want to do?
Well, let's get into the cards, man. It's my favorite segment, and yeah. I'm
going to pick this time. I've had this Donruss pack here for a long time.
All right. It might be out of my range. So let's do it, though.
1989 Donruss, I believe. I don't know why it doesn't say on...
Just keeping it real.
I don't know why on the pack it doesn't say what year it is.
I'm hoping for some rookie cards.
Well, let's see here. From the back, I can tell. These are 88 Donruss, so... Yeah, you need some rookies here.
Hopefully you have a...
And after that Leaf Studio thing, I think I'm going to, if we continue doing these more and more, I'm going to buy just a box of those and we'll just read the back of the cards. Because I don't know if you remember when we were starting to see their favorite movies, and Albert Bell's favorite movie, Silence of the Lambs. That's kind of my favorite story. All right, first guy. This is Doug Jones. This is a former closer.
He was around for a while. He was on the Tigers in the 2000s.
Yep, this is his second year of playing. He, let's see. I don't see this. This is saves. Okay, he had 8 saves. I'm going to say, is a save not on here? Would that be crazy? But he was an Indian for a long time, a Cub. Detroit Tiger, as you mentioned, an Astro. This guy will just move on from Dave Meads. He's a lefty, wasn't real good, not much to talk about there. Dave Meads, an Astro. Mike Kingery. Maybe we went the wrong pack here. Mike Kingery. Don't know much about him. I remember him, but I don't remember him. Started with the Royals. All right, we got a former manager. We got a former Cardinal nemesis. And we got a former, well, I think he's still an Arizona Diamondback broadcaster, Bob Brenly.
Bob Brenly, yeah.
It's a good mustache. These cards all have kind of
for a little bit on the broadcasting scene.
Yeah, and I loved him. I thought him and Len Casper were great together. And when he said he was leaving, I watch a lot of Cubs games. I really think Len Casper's great. And I was like, man, I love him and Bob together. But Jim DeShays has joined him, and it's turned out great. Yep. I did not know this guy right here. First of all, it has my gut. I'll show this card, obviously. That's Mackey Sasser.
Sasser. He got around, too.
Do you remember Mackey Sasser's issue? He could not throw the ball back to the pitcher without pumping. And if you watch on YouTube, it's amazing. He started, people would steal on him on his throw back to the pitcher. And he was a rated rookie here for the Pirates, which I don't remember. And that is not the most flattering shot of Mackey Sasser, as he's looking like he's whiffing on a curveball or kind of missing out. Rated rookie Mackey Sasser.
Huh.
Okay. Nice. Sean Hilligus didn't do much, was a got the rated rookies, but I mean, he was a Texas Ranger for a while, right? Sean Hilligus. But here's with the Dodgers. Probably a teammate of Ricky Horton's in 1988. Okay. Matt Noakes. Do you remember Matt Noakes?
This is a dry pack, buddy. You better bring it.
Matt Noakes hit some bombs in 87. Let me look. Let's see. 32 homers, 87 RBIs, and that was it. So 87, the ball was juiced. He's kind of like the Brady Anderson of the 80s. He had this one giant year, and that was it. I also thought he looked like Rob Lowe a little bit.
So that was – what year did Fielder hit 51 for them? Because they had – the Tigers were – was that 91?
Yes. Okay. Because then no one hit 50, I think, till 95 or 96 again.
They had a couple guys hitting. Bob Parrish was hitting like 25 as a catcher at that point in time, and I'm trying to think who the third baseman was.
No, I'm going to say Travis Fryman. No,
shortstop.
All right,
they had some guys.
They did, and Andres Thomas on the terrible Braves teams of the '80s. We'll move on. Yeah. I love this guy's name, Eric Plunk. You just know he's got to hit a lot of batters, right? Former reliever.
At least the intimidation factor.
I never understood why these Ron Darling here, Diamond King. Yeah. I hated the Diamond King. I don't know why.
There's a junior card out there that's a Diamond King that I think is pretty popular.
Why? What's the Diamond? Okay, here's a good one. This is the Bobby Bonilla card. Bobby Bo for the Pirates is 1980.
Still getting paid. Made more money this year than any other baseball player.
When does that come up? When is Bobby Bo Day?
I'm not sure.
Great documentary.
Sometime in July.
It's like a YouTube documentary, or it was done on ESPN, but it's out on YouTube. It's about 30 minutes long. It's great. Bobby Bonilla still gets paid because they prorated that salary. Former Angel manager. I don't know if he's up to anything right now. Mike Scioscia.
So back to that Diamond Kings card, Mike Scioscia. Yeah, he's getting some thoughts for potentially for some managing gigs. But the 1990 Donruss Diamond Kings King Griffey Jr. card in mint condition on eBay for $1,424.
I wonder, it must not have been highly produced then.
Yeah.
Melito Perez. No. Okay. I'll save that one for last. Dave Magadan. He's a guy. He's a guy.
Now we're talking.
Here's the last one. Rest in peace, Bill Buckner.
Oh.
How about that he played after, I didn't know he played after his Red Sox career.
Right.
Also,
he's a good Cub, too.
His back of his card, they only would show 5 years. He played for 20 years or so, but you could only get like 5 years on the back of his card here. Yeah. That's why Donruss was bad. Should we do another pack? I feel like that was like a...
let's keep it going. We cut our segment short, I feel like we take our momentum to the end. Let's go.
Let me see what I got here. So yeah, I have a Fleer 91. Let's try Fleer 91. What do you think?
I like it.
Okay, but there's like 45 cards in here, so I'm gonna only take one stack.
Let's just do one.
One stack. I don't know why there's 45 cards. There's a logo sticker in here too, though. So let me open up the Fleer here. That's me opening. I'm opening Fleer 91. Donruss was terrible. It's going to make it harder to edit since we're doing more cards, but that's okay because I'm thinking about the content for the people. And then the first thing you get is a checklist. That's just. I mean, this was like. I remember you get a checklist and it was like, what? Why do they even have this? Why? I don't need a checklist.
Right. Did
anyone ever really check these off?
I'm sure there's some people that try to collect them all, but that's what Buckner's for.
Marvell Wynn. He was with the Cubs there. I remember him with a Padre. Nelson Liriano.
All right.
Okay, with the Twins. Jim Leyritz. He got in some trouble, I think, right? This is maybe a rookie.
Yeah, he was a Mitchell Report guy, right?
Yeah, but he did some other weird stuff.
Allegedly?
Yeah,
really?
Yeah. Okay, here we go. This. I remember this being a big deal. I don't know if this card's worth anything because I got into this argument about this guy about 6, maybe 9 months ago. Showing Ben Mcdonald. He was the number one overall draft choice of the Orioles, I think, in 1989. And the argument was, I said he was kind of a flop. And the person arguing with me is like, no, he had a pretty good career. And he had an okay career, but for a number one overall draft choice, I was expecting... I just remember being a kid in 1989 hearing about this guy, Ben Mcdonald. And then he pitched in 1989 for the Orioles, I think. So they fast-tracked him. I don't know if you have his numbers there. I don't know if that's what you're looking up, but no. It doesn't matter. Jerry Brown, former governor of...
Brown with
California. Chili Davis with the Angels.
I was a Chili Davis fan.
He called St. Louis a cow town. Can't be a fan of Chili Davis.
Yes.
That Giants team got broken up pretty fast, too, because Chili Davis was on the 87 Giants and then was on the 88 Angels. He's an Angel here in this card from 1991. And Jeffrey Leonard went to the Brewers. So they had pretty much... But then they went to the playoffs. They basically replaced it with Kevin Mitchell, which worked out pretty damn good for them. And they went to the World Series in 1989. Doug Jennings, an A. Probably a Tony La Russa favorite, but not much going on there. Here we go, rookie.
The Joe McEwing of that era.
Not a rookie, but this is a Hall of Famer, Tom Glavine. And he's sliding.
That's awesome.
Why?
I like the show him in his element. You know, Chicks Dig Log Ball. That's one of my favorite commercials ever, where you take these Hall of Fame pitchers and try to show them in their other aspects. Tom Glavine, hell of an athlete, drafted into the NHL as well, I believe.
He's sliding into home, but I will say that is a picture perfect slide. That's his form that you would show to any kid. Get that leg underneath, tuck, get those two arms out so they don't break. He looks like Steve Avery in this picture, though, so I'm curious if that's actually Steve Avery, but I'll do some research on that.
Tom Glavine. Steve Avery's bigger.
Alejandro Pena. This guy, I remember him in the 80s. He hit through hard.
Pena's not him.
Alejandro Pena. Gave up the game-winning hit. I just watched last night. You ever get a YouTube hole and you start watching old baseball games that shouldn't? I watched the Jack Morris-Smoltz game. Orlando Pena gave up the last base hit in the 1991 Game 7 World Series. I can't remember who got it, though. Luis Rivera. The back of this card's pretty good. I don't know how you could see with those glasses, but... we're going to have to do Leaf Studio next time. Mark Williamson. This guy was a pitcher for the Orioles. We'll move on. Rick Parker. I have never heard of Rick Parker. And I've watched a lot of baseball back in the 80s and 90s. Luckily, we're going to end on a good one here. Hall of Famer, Mr. Robin Yount.
Wonderful.
Weird. He started out as a shortstop, then out to the outfield. Not many players made that move. Well, the baseball card thing was a flop, but the 28 thing was good. So we're 1 for 3.
Can't win them all.
Just to talk about the outfield thing, Do you remember that Craig Biggio was playing left field in 2004 for the Astros? I sort of forgot that, but again, I was in a YouTube hole watching Game 6 of the 04.
Sometimes he played center field because there's footage of him running up that hill.
It's just weird to me because now that it's been almost 15 years since he's played a game, I'm like, Biggio was in the outfield, but they had Jeff Kent, and he was not going to catch, so now it makes sense. But just that first glimpse, I'm like, what is Biggio doing in left field? But man, what a lineup. If the Astros, how we beat the Astros in 04 with that lineup, Beltran going nuts, Berkman obviously, Jeff Kent was in his prime, Biggio was in his late 30s but still was scoring a ton of runs. Bagwell, did I mention everybody? Morgan Ensberg?
Yeah, except for the pitching, which is pretty damn important for them too.
Clemens and Pettit, well. Clemens and Pettit to start. But then they had Brandon Backey and, Pete Monroe was the guy who started Game 6, so that it dropped off. Pettit, I don't believe, pitched in the playoffs in 06, and that's in 04, and that's possibly how the Cardinals made their way to the World Series and then got swept.
A little bit of Jimmy Edmonds in there, too.
That was fun, Mike. We still have more baseball cards, but I think I'm going to have to go to my local dime store. The World of Baseball. You grew up in South County. Did you ever go to World of Baseball? Was that still around? It was across from Melville Senior High, and it was a baseball card store. It was my first baseball card.
I had Southtown Sluggers, and I was a trade show card guy. I'd be at all those events. The Darling family, we like them. Whose son, I believe, became a comedian around town. But we were up at Southtown Sluggers there in Oakville quite a lot.
It was like a Harry Carey story right there. I think he's now with the Pope or something. I hope he's still doing well. Well, I enjoyed it. Number 28, and then some baseball cards. We had some more. Again, a full pad of paper. We didn't get to all of it, so that means, Mike, we're just gonna have to continue and do this again next week.
Sounds good, my friend.
I hope you're enjoying it.
I am. We'll do this in person soon.
That's right. We're almost out of COVID. Maybe we'll do it at a ballpark. You never know. So that's going to do it for Here's the Pitch. Sponsored by Masses Restaurants, 5 locations. STLmasses.com is their website. Find their menus there and locations. And you can go there right now and get a meatball sandwich, get some pasta, some fish, whatever you want. They've got it. That's going to do it for Here's the Pitch. We'll see you next time.